Welcome to Disloyal. Thank you for being here. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Disloyal. We're truly grateful for each and every one of you. Drop a comment below and tell us where in the world you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. Now let's get started. The porch light was out when I pulled into the driveway. My chest tightened, the weight of exhaustion mixing with a simmering frustration that had become all too familiar. This wasn't unusual anymore. Emma's behavior over the past months had shifted dramatically. Late nights with friends, endless excuses, and a wall of secrecy that left me constantly on edge. I stepped inside, greeted by the suffocating silence of the house. It felt like an old, unwelcome companion. The faint trace of her perfume lingered in the air, but there was no sign of her. A half-empty coffee mug sat abandoned on the kitchen counter. The lipstick smudged on the rim, an unintentional clue that made my stomach churn. "Emma?" I called out, my voice echoing through the empty rooms. No response. I moved into the living room. That's when I saw it, her phone glowing softly on the couch. It caught my eye, and as I approached, a text notification lit up the screen. "Can't wait to see you again. Tonight was amazing." I froze. My breath hitched, and an icy wave of disbelief washed over me. My fists clenched as an avalanche of emotions cascaded through me. Anger, hurt, betrayal. But above all, a cold, hard resolve began to take root. This wasn't just another misunderstanding or a misread signal. The growing distance between us over the past year suddenly became clear. Every time I tried to reach out to her, she dismissed my concerns, insisting it was work stress or a need for space. But this was undeniable. With trembling hands, I picked up her phone. I knew it was a violation, but the need for answers overpowered any guilt. Each text was like a blade cutting deeper. The name Chris stood out in the messages. A man I'd never heard of, but whose words painted a damning picture. The conversation was full of flirtation, innuendo, and betrayal. The final message struck like a hammer. "See you at the Golden Vine tonight. I can't wait to hold you again." My vision blurred as the truth hit me like a freight train. She wasn't with friends. She was with him. I sank onto the couch, my mind spinning. For years, I had been her foundation, the one who supported her, believed in her, and weathered every storm by her side. And now, she had thrown it all away. But I wasn't going to let this destroy me. Not without consequences. A plan began to form in the back of my mind, cold, methodical, and resolute. If Emma wanted to gamble with everything we had built together, she would learn the hard way that some losses can't be undone. I reached for a stack of documents I had quietly prepared months ago. Divorce papers. Alongside them was a meticulously kept ledger, a detailed account of every financial safeguard I had put in place to ensure that if this moment ever arrived, I wouldn't be the one left in ruins. This was no longer about salvaging our relationship. It was about salvaging myself. Fueled by adrenaline and a quiet, simmering anger, I spent the rest of the night immersed in action. I couldn't allow emotions to cloud my judgment. Everything had to be precise, calculated, and final. If she had decided my loyalty wasn't worth her own, she would have to face the full weight of that choice. The first step was simple: that I left the divorce papers on the kitchen counter, neatly placed next to a small velvet box containing her engagement ring. Beneath them lay a handwritten letter. Every word was chosen with care, reflecting the pain of my discovery while making it clear that I would no longer allow myself to be a casualty of her deception. "Emma, for years, I've loved you more than words can express. I believed in you, supported you, and hoped that you would choose us over temporary distractions. But love alone isn't enough, not without respect and commitment. Your actions have shown me where your priorities truly lie. I won't beg you to change. If you still want a life with me, you'll know where to find me. I'll be waiting at the Pinewood Suites, room 304, until 5 p.m. this Friday. If you don't show, I'll know we're done. The papers are final. Think carefully before you make your choice. Luke, after leaving the letter in plain sight, I began taking steps to secure my future. The financial safeguards I had been preparing for months were activated without hesitation. Joint accounts were closed, assets were transferred to protected accounts, and I canceled every shared subscription and financial tie connected to my name. If she wanted freedom, she could have it, but not at my expense. By the following morning, I was checked into the Pinewood Suites. The weight of everything I had done pressed heavily on me. Despite the betrayal, a small part of me still held on to hope that she would choose to meet me halfway. The days passed slowly. As Friday arrived, the clock seemed to mock me with every passing second. At 4:30 p.m., I sat by the window, staring down at the street below. Was she on her way? Did she even care enough to try? By 5:30, the answer was clear. She wasn't coming. I stood, every emotion I had suppressed boiling to the surface. Anger, sadness, and finally, a sense of resolve. She had made her decision, and now it was time for me to make mine. I left the hotel and returned to what had once been our shared home. The house was now a shell, stripped of my presence. The quiet was absolute, but it no longer unsettled me. I wouldn't be staying here. The realtor had already been contacted, and the property would be listed in a matter of days. That evening, Emma returned. From my car, parked discreetly down the street, I watched as she stepped inside. The light in the kitchen flicked on, and I could imagine the scene unfolding. Her irritation and confusion as she called out my name, her shock as she saw the papers and the empty spaces where my belongings had once been. I watched as she read my letter, her shoulders stiffening as its meaning sank in. She crumpled the paper in her hand, her expression unreadable from where I sat. Was it anger? Disbelief? It didn't matter anymore. I drove away, leaving her to confront the silence of the life she had chosen. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. The divorce proceedings began swiftly, and my lawyer, Sarah, was relentless. Every measure I had taken in advance ensured my position was unassailable. Emma had little room to contest the terms. During our first court appearance, she tried to paint herself as a victim, claiming she'd felt overwhelmed, trapped by the monotony of our routine life, and that she needed an escape. But Sarah, my lawyer, dismantled her arguments with precision. Piece by piece, she laid out evidence of Emma's infidelity and financial irresponsibility, hotel receipts, text messages, and even witness testimonies. The picture painted was irrefutable. Emma's attorney tried to challenge the admissibility of the evidence, but their attempts were futile. I watched as the realization dawned on her face. For the first time, her usual defiance faded. In its place was something else: regret, guilt. It didn't matter anymore. As the legal battles raged on, I focused on rebuilding my life. I moved into a new apartment closer to the city, threw myself into my career, and reconnected with friends I had neglected during my marriage. Each step forward felt like peeling back layers of pain, leaving me lighter and more resolute. Meanwhile, Emma's life began to unravel. Mutual friends distanced themselves, and whispers of her choices followed her everywhere. The facade she tried to maintain at work started to crack. Months after the divorce was finalized, I unexpectedly ran into her at a coffee shop. She looked different, worn down. The confident, vibrant woman I had once loved now seemed weary, her eyes carrying a weight I couldn't ignore. "Luke," she said softly, her voice lacking its familiar spark. I nodded, keeping my response curt. "Emma," she hesitated, her lips parting as if searching for the right words. I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I studied her for a moment. Part of me wanted to lash out, to remind her of the pain she'd caused. But another part, the part that had moved on, knew there was no point. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said, my voice steady. Without waiting for a reply, I walked away, feeling an unexpected wave of closure. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. Life began to feel normal again as the days turned into weeks. Though the scars of betrayal lingered, I channeled my energy into work, tackling ambitious projects and long hours. It wasn't just a distraction. It was a foundation for the new life I was building. Still, there were moments when memories crept back in. Quiet evenings would sometimes bring flashes of Emma's laughter, the warmth we had shared, and the promises we had made. It was like looking at a house you once called home, now reduced to rubble. I reminded myself that Emma wasn't the woman I thought I knew. Her betrayal hadn't been a single mistake or lapse in judgment. It was a series of choices, each one prioritizing her own desires over our marriage, each one another nail in the coffin of what we once had. One afternoon, while sorting through old boxes, I stumbled upon a collection of photos from the early years of our relationship. A younger version of me smiled back from the glossy prints, standing beside Emma on a cliff's edge during a road trip. I remembered that day vividly. The way she teased me about my fear of heights, how her laughter echoed through the canyon. For a moment, the ache of nostalgia washed over me. But then, like a tide receding, clarity set in. I realized how much I had romanticized those memories, how blind I had been to the cracks that existed even then. Emma had always been restless, chasing thrills and validation in ways that left me struggling to keep up. I thought I could be her anchor, but she wasn't looking for stability. She was searching for an escape. As I placed the photos back in the box, I felt something shift within me. Those memories were no longer chains binding me to the past. They were simply echoes of a life I had left behind, a life that no longer defined who I was. Months later, I heard through mutual friends that Emma was struggling. She had moved into a modest apartment in the city and was rumored to be having trouble at work. Her once vibrant social life had all but disappeared, and she seemed adrift. A part of me wanted to feel vindicated, to revel in the consequences of her choices. But instead, I felt something unexpected, pity. She had thrown away everything we'd built together, only to find herself more alone than ever. One day, an email from her appeared in my inbox. The subject line was simple: "I'm sorry." I hesitated. Did I even want to read it? Did she deserve the satisfaction of knowing I'd seen her words? But curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked. Subject: "I'm sorry. Luke, I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, but I need you to know how sorry I am. I've spent the last few months replaying everything in my head, and I can't believe how blind I was to what I had. You were always there for me, patient, loving, and I threw it all away. I can't undo the damage I've caused, but I need you to know that I see it now. I see how much I hurt you, and I hate myself for it. I hope you're finding happiness, even if it's without me. You deserve it more than anyone I've ever known." Emma, I read the message twice, emotions swirling, anger, sadness, and a strange sense of closure. She was right. She didn't deserve forgiveness. But in that moment, I realized something important. I no longer needed to carry the weight of her betrayal. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Over time, the pain of her actions faded into the background. I focused on building a new version of myself, stronger, more self-assured. Friends began to comment on how much lighter and happier I seemed, and for the first time in years, I truly felt free. I reconnected with old friends, tried new hobbies, and even began entertaining the idea of dating again. This time, I wasn't looking to fill a void. I was looking for someone who valued honesty, respect, and genuine partnership. One evening, as I strolled to the park near my new apartment, a deep sense of peace settled over me. The sun dipped low in the sky, painting everything in golden hues, and children's laughter echoed through the air. For the first time, I thought of Emma not with anger or regret, but with gratitude. Her betrayal had been a painful lesson, but it was also a turning point. It forced me to rebuild my life on my terms. I wasn't just moving on, I was moving up. Months turned into a year, and my life quietly transformed. I found a sense of joy that was deep and grounded, far from the surface-level happiness Emma had always chased. My career flourished, and I surrounded myself with people who respected and valued me. Just when I thought the past was firmly behind me, a ripple of it resurfaced. It began with a message from an unknown number. "Luke, I need to talk to you. It's important." I stared at the message, my stomach tightening. The number was unfamiliar, but I knew exactly who it was. Emma. For a long moment, I debated whether to respond. What could she possibly want now? The divorce was finalized, the assets divided, and the dust had long since settled. Against my better judgment, I replied, "What do you need?" Her response was immediate. "Can we meet?" "Just once. I need to explain something." My first instinct was to delete the message and move on, but curiosity gnawed at me. What more could she have to say? After everything, I couldn't imagine what warranted this. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a small cafe on the outskirts of the city, a neutral, unfamiliar place. When I arrived, Emma was already seated by the window. She looked different. The confidence that once defined her was gone, replaced by a quiet weariness. Her face bore lines of stress and regret, and her posture seemed smaller, as if she was carrying the weight of the world. "Luke," she said softly when she saw me, her voice trembling ever so slightly. She said it softly when I approached, her voice carrying none of the bravado I remembered. I nodded, taking the seat across from her. "You said you needed to talk." She hesitated, her hands fidgeting with the coffee cup in front of her. For a moment, I thought she might back out, but then she took a deep breath. "I've made a mess of everything," she began, her voice trembling. "And I don't expect you to forgive me, but there's something you don't know, and I need to tell you." Her words caught me off guard. After all this time, what could possibly be left unsaid? "Go on," I said, keeping my tone neutral. Emma swallowed hard, her eyes filling with unshed tears. "I thought I could handle everything on my own. I thought I didn't need anyone, not you, not anyone. But I was wrong. And now," her voice cracked as she looked away, "now I'm facing the consequences of my choices." "Emma," I said, my patience wearing thin, "if you want me to listen, you need to get to the point." She flinched but nodded, her hands tightening around the coffee cup. "Chris," she said, barely above a whisper, "the man I cheated with, he wasn't who I thought he was. He used me, manipulated me, and left me when I was at my lowest. And now he's trying to ruin what little I have left. He's threatening to tell my boss about our affair, to send messages and photos that would destroy my career. I thought maybe you could help me." Her words hung in the air, a strange mix of desperation and misplaced hope. I leaned back in my chair, letting her request settle. The audacity of it was almost laughable. After everything she had done, shattering our marriage, betraying my trust, and choosing her selfish desires over the life we'd built together, she wanted me to save her from the fallout of her own actions. "Emma," I said, my voice cold and measured, "I'm not your savior anymore." Her face crumpled, the tears she'd been holding back finally spilling over. "I know I don't deserve it," she whispered, "but I don't know who else to turn to." I stood, the chair scraping against the floor. "You made your choices, and now you have to live with them. I won't clean up your mess." For a moment, she looked up at me with something I hadn't seen in years, genuine regret. But it was too late. Walking out of that cafe, I felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, vindication, and a lingering sadness for the woman Emma had become. She had been given every chance to change, every opportunity to choose a better path, and she had squandered them all. I wouldn't be drawn back into her chaos. My life was finally mine again, and I intended to keep it that way. From that moment on, Emma was no longer a shadow in my life. Whatever battles she faced were hers to fight. I had built something stronger, something unshakable. No ghost from the past could take that away. This was my second chance. A life free from lies, betrayal, and misplaced loyalty. For the first time in years, I was truly at peace. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, Disloyal, for more intriguing tales of heartbreak and redemption.